Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's C-O-M-B-E-S-T, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?
I'm Egbert, the owner of this station. Check out my website at egbert.com. That's E-G-G-B-U-R-T, egbert.com. Now it's back to Brad and John. Check out their website at bjshow.co. The BJ Show? Come on, guys. Anyway, here's B and J.
And once again, the website is bjshow.co. Not .com, but .co. I am Brad, that is John. And you hinted in our last break, what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about something interesting now?
Oh, yeah. So we've talked before about how politics is pro wrestling.
Yeah, right.
And on the Missouri Times, I've written columns about this before. Brad uses the example all the time of you could go to Clayton and you could see two attorneys in a courtroom at each other's throats and disparaging each other and excoriating each other. And then an hour later, they're at CJ Muggs, pounding beers, patting each other on the back.
Exactly.
When you've seen this, when you've seen behind the scenes of how this stuff works, sometimes you just laugh about it. It's like a pro wrestling show. A corporation in the United States, and to protect friends of the show, Brad, we're gonna redact a few key details here, but a large corporation in the United States had an event very recently where they were honoring a departing executive. Now, what do you get the executive that has everything, Brad? Somebody that's made a ton of money. What could you possibly get them that they don't have? Of course, who knows? What don't they have? An entry into the congressional record. Wouldn't that be great, Brad, if you were leaving your company and somebody gave you a document that said, hey, a member of Congress talked about you and read this corporate bio that we prepared for them, and they read it and probably said your name incorrectly on the floor of the U.S. House of Representatives. Isn't that amazing? And everyone would clap. The whole train claps. So how do you do it? Now, this is a how-to for anybody who's listening to this. You work for a nonprofit or a corporation. Here's how you do it. What you do is all you got to do is contact a lobbyist. And you say, look, what's the going rate to get our executive into the congressional record? We want to have a member of Congress say their name, read our corporate statement, put a plug in for our company and what great employers we are. How much is that going to run me? And the lobbyist can give you a price for their services, right? You could say, for the sake of discussion, Brad, we'll say like $8,000. Maybe it's 5, maybe it's 3. We'll call it $8,000 for now. And what that lobbyist says is, hey, okay, so how soon do you need this? And then the company's like, well, we're having a company town hall next Tuesday. Can we get it done by Tuesday? And the lobbyist will say, oh, that's really quick, but I'll put a rush delivery on it. And then the lobbyist can use their relationship that they have with a member of Congress and go and say, hey, listen, my client so-and-so really needs something read on the floor of the House. And then the congressman probably says, okay, like how important is this to you? And the lobbyist can say, well, it's pretty important, And then, the member of Congress can go down there and read the prepared remarks that the company puts together, whatever. Then it's in the congressional record, Brad, and it's there forever. And the congressional record used to be a very important physical document that was at every library and you could read it and digest it. And it was a BFD. And that's not to say it's not a BFD now. But a major U.S. corporation did this recently, and everybody's clapping and everybody's having a good time. And it's an example of pro wrestling, Brad, because you and I have been to events. You've gone there with your son, and you're just along for the ride, and you buy into the story. And in your case, Brad, you saw Sting fighting Big Van Vader in 1993, and when you're a little too close to it, you see that punch doesn't actually connect. You see that it's not really what it's supposed. You're not really what they're selling you in the story. But everybody comes out a winner because the corporate executive doesn't know any better. The corporate executive is happy to just have a document, and they can tell their family, "Look, I was mentioned on the floor of the U.S. House of Representatives." And most importantly, Brad, if you're that government relations guy, you can stand in front of hundreds of people in the cafe and thousands of employees watching online, and you could say, "Oh, it took a lot to get this done. It took a lot, but we did it. We did it for you, departing executive. And everybody wins, Brad. And it's just an example of, if you're sitting in a crowd and you've seen something like this happen before, you just politely clap and you nod and you say, this is the way the game works. Now, for posterity's sake, Brad, last night I went to the Congressional Record and I wanted to see some of the ridiculous stuff that's in the Congressional Record. In general, this departing executive at an American company would be sandwiched in the Congressional Record. And I'll remove details here, but essentially between a crossing guard, who did a great job in 6th grade helping people cross the street all school year long. And my favorite one, Brad, was Congresswoman Nancy Mace had one recently honoring the Charleston River Dogs minor league baseball team because they had a hell of a season last year, Brad. So if you want to know how to get your executive a gift that nobody else could get them, just hire a lobbyist for a day, Brad.
Okay.
And you know what? In a corporate budget, $5,000, $8,000 to purchase a resolution from a member of Congress really isn't that much.
Okay, so I got to ask you a question. You're doing this as a hypothetical, but obviously this really happened?
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, and let's be fair.
I mean, you have a specific instance where this happened recently?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Now, to be fair, Brad, there are 435 members of the U.S. House of Representatives.
Right.
And here's what I would say. You know how on the show before we've said no blood, no foul?
Right.
There is nothing wrong. I think, and we'll use Cori Bush as an example because clearly this isn't a Cori Bush example. If Cori Bush wants to go to the floor of the U.S. House and honor a woman who's done volunteer work in Ferguson for years, I think Cori Bush should be able to go to the floor of the U.S. House, honestly, whenever she wants to and read whatever resolution for whatever, right? Like there's no harm in doing it. But what I think is funny about it, Brad, is that you have otherwise really smart people who might work at a corporation and they're sitting at a town hall and if for all they know, Brad, to use the wrestling analogy, Sting is really punching Big Van Vader really hard. And the company is so well respected by Congress that a member of Congress took to the floor and read something into the Congressional Record when really just rent a lobbyist for a day, Brad.
Okay, a couple things, and I appreciate what you're saying. You're not going to give away who this actually was because this really actually happened, correct? And was it?
Absolutely.
Was it a St. ? Company, or would that give
it's a company that happens to. They do have a lot of employees in St. Louis, Brad.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. Okay, changing topics just a little bit, but not tremendously off the topic. Did you see? I read this article yesterday and found it fascinating. Did you see last week on the State of the Union address that George Santos was there? Did you see this?
Oh, yeah, I did. And did you see what he was wearing?
Well, yes, sort of interesting, weird clothes. Okay, I read this article yesterday that talked about the fact that once you are a member of the Senate or the House of Representatives, your congressman, either house, you have lifetime privileges to the building. Did you know this?
No, I didn't know that, but that makes sense.
And so, in other words, he can come and go as he wants. He can show up on a Tuesday today at 11 o'clock. He can show up. Now, here's what's interesting. First off, I think to myself, okay, the Republicans once again shoot themselves in the foot, and especially after yesterday, because Ken Buck, do you know this crazy story?
Oh, yeah, he's gone.
Ken Buck is resigning from Congress, not like at the end of his term, next week.
To screw everybody.
Right, he's out of there. So that means the Republicans will have a majority of one vote, one congressman, okay? So the interesting part of this is that George Santos gets booted out of the House, but yet in the Senate we have a senator who is in deep doo-doo, and not for the first time, the second or third time, but this time it looks like he's going down, and nobody says anything about that. Nobody kicks him out of the Senate. Once again, the George Santos trial, I believe, is not until September. In the meantime, and it's funny, you just talked about this whole thing, and this is my dovetail into that. In the meantime, George Santos has made himself quite a bit of money on Cameo, where if you don't know what Cameo is a site where there's a lot of celebrity, and it's not necessarily, there are some A-listers, but it's a lot of B and C listers. And you go on there and you say, hey, I want, like in this example, I want George Santos, a very controversial former member of Congress. I want him to tell my wife, hey, honey, this is George Santos, and your husband, Jim, he loves you. He thinks you're amazing. And you know what? If I were in Congress, I would pass a bill that you would be the most amazing woman in the world. You know, I mean, that's the kind of stuff he does. Okay, think about this for a minute. He's got a virtual money machine because he can go into the Capitol Hill anytime he wants and say, hi, I'm George Santos. Yes, I'm standing right here in the rotunda at Capitol Hall.
Absolutely.
Or Capitol Hill. I'm going like, man, this guy could be a millionaire like in 6 months.
Yeah. Now, to parse just a little bit, the rotunda in a lot of places are still public, but you're right though, Brad. If he has privileges to travel in other parts of the building, he could go in places where the common YouTuber couldn't step, and he could have a very regal backdrop and say, this is George Santos, and do that whole pitch.
The article was written by a guy, I think Chad Pergram, who's one of the reporters for Fox News. Chad followed him around on the night of the congressional or the State of the Union message, and he was running into other senators and congressmen, some of them who were, shaking hands, some of them who avoided him, some of them pretended he didn't exist, stuff like that. And what I'm thinking to myself, here we go again, just exactly what you said, and it's to the point where, and I'm jealous because I'm thinking to myself, why can't I get that kind of money? Why can't I get that kind of money where, hey, Brad, will you go out in the corner of Feisey Road and Bryan Road and talk about my Uncle Jim, and I'll pay you $100? Oh, no problem.
Absolutely.
Because I'm a know nothing, lightweight, and nobody gives a poop about me. Okay, now a couple things. You sent me, this is sort of delayed reaction. You sent me something the other day about Peggy Hubbard, who is one of the talk show hosts on 93.3. And, she ran for Senate. Didn't she run for Senate or something like that?
She ran for something in Illinois. Yeah, I'm not sure maybe she ran for Congress in Illinois.
I can't remember what it was.
If it's on the other side of the river, Brad, I don't pay any attention to it.
I thought she ran for Senate. Okay. So John sends me this thing that she's going to have. She has an announcement that she's going to have Mike Lindell on her show. Okay.
Wait,
now,
did I? I don't think I sent you anything about Peggy Hubbard.
Yeah, you did. I'm pretty sure it was you, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't me, because I don't know anything about. All I know is Mike Lindell's the pillow guy.
Yeah.
So somebody else sent this to you.
I thought it was you.
It wasn't me.
Anyways.
But she called me on the counter.
Okay.
It wasn't.
Somebody sent me this thing about Peggy Hubbard and interviewing Mike Lindell. Okay. Now, immediately, people are going to go like, oh, my God, I can't believe she's doing that. He's such a nutbag. He's such a crazy man. See, how you whitewash people. I have a picture of me and Mike Lindell. I mean, literally selfie. Yeah, selfie of me and Mike Lindell. Let me tell you the story behind this picture. I used to be very active working for volunteering for the Salvation Army, specifically of St. Charles County. They have their own 2 operations out there. They have the operation in St. Charles and the really nice place out there. Not the place in St. Charles isn't. It's nice. But the place out there in O'Fallon is really nice, down the street from one of my favorite restaurants, Ethel's, okay? And Mike is a huge, huge, huge supporter of the Salvation Army. And the Salvation Army had a grand opening for one of their new resell it shops. Actually, it was sort of weird because Goodwill built a brand new building across the street right there on Harvester. And the Salvation Army took over their old spot, which used to be a long time ago, used to be a hardware store right there at Harvester.
Oh, yeah, that's right, at Harvester and 364, right?
Exactly, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay, so Mike Lindell, I don't know how in the world he got the notification of this. Mike Lindell flew in on his corporate jet into St. Louis for no other reason than to attend the grand opening of a Salvation Army resale shop. And not only did he do that, they had a display, somewhere in my pictures, I can still find it, they had a display that was probably, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this, the display was probably 10 feet tall and probably 30 feet wide of all Mike Lindell's products, including, mainly MyPillow, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And he had given given to the Salvation Army, not like proceeds benefit. He gave those to the Salvation Army, and the Salvation Army was selling those at half retail price. So whatever that was, and let's say it was $30, $30 went to the Salvation Army. There was no money exchanged whatsoever. So
wow, that's great.
Now, do you know the reason behind this?
Why is that?
Mike Lindell is a recovering addict. He's a recovering drug addict and alcoholic as well, too. Mike has taken on the mission of he is behind anybody, and specifically organizations like the Salvation Army, that try to help people from the addiction that so many people find themselves in, alcohol, drugs, whatever it is. Specifically, the Salvation Army, for a long time, very much a purveyor of the 12 steps, for alcoholics. There's, 12 steps for a lot of things now. And once again, I put this picture up on my Facebook page, and oh my God, did I get hassled by people. I can't believe you do that. I can't believe you put a picture of you and Mike Lindell. That guy's a creep. He's terrible. He's a horrible person.
And they have no idea what the context is or why you were there.
Exactly.
Yeah, of course not.
But see, and once again, with the Peggy Hubbard thing, she's going like, oh, I'm with Mike Lindell. And immediately I'm thinking to myself, oh, that's good for her. She's got a great interview, because Mike's always a great interview. But there are people going like, that Peggy Hubbard, I think she's a terrible person because she'd have Mike Lindell on her show. Get what I'm saying?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Well, and also, I mean, there's so many things that go in there. But if you just flash images of people like him or like anybody associated with Trump, and when you think about Trump derangement syndrome, I mean, people are knee-jerk going to be like, oh, Brad, what the hell are you doing next to that guy?
But there's some people, like, for example, let's use Snoop as an example. That's Snoop Dogg, okay?
Yeah.
Snoop Dogg, who I believe at once upon a time was accused of murder, if I'm not mistaken. I think.
Oh, yeah, that was a big deal. It turns out his homeboy was actually the one that fired the gun.
Right, but essentially he has a very, 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 very checkered past. But once again, he talks about being high all the time, and all he does is smoke dope and blah, 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 blah. And yet people go, oh, man, I'd love to have a picture of me and Snoop Dogg. And I'm going like, okay, so let me think about this for a minute. Mike Lindell is toxic, but Snoop Dogg, who's led this crazy, weird life, and he's like buds with Martha Stewart. I'm going like,
they're both big pot advocates. Now, for what it's worth, though, Brad, I mean, that has to do with partisanship. The idea of Mike Lindell is the idea of.
I get it.
I mean, when you think about the divide in the country, and you know what? I'm sure there's if somebody posted a picture of themselves with the Dixie Chicks, I wouldn't need, or I guess they're just the chicks now. I wouldn't need context to roll my eyes. I'd be like,
One of them just died. Did you know that?
Was it Natalie Maine?
I don't think so. One of the others. She just, I think a couple weeks ago.
It was one of the girls that got kicked out early, right?
Can't remember. I mean,
yeah, I think she essentially got kicked out of the group early, and then she missed a lot of their lucrative stuff and their whole going woke thing and whatever.
Yeah, boy, that's a whole nother thing. One of my favorite videos is the Earl video. You know what I'm talking about, the song?
Yeah, I'm familiar. Don't they do like what's the thing where the broads drive the guy off the cliff?
They don't drive him off.
They drive themselves off a cliff.
No, that's what's
Thelma and Louise.
Yeah, Thelma and Louise. Yeah, Earl is where they take Earl out for a nice picnic, and
it's like Earl had to die, isn't that the catchphrase?
Because Earl had to die. That's the hook in the song. Now see,
we love female empowerment.
Once again,
so it's adorable.
But see, once again, what's amazing to me is that song's okay where you're going to kill Earl, but if a dude came out with, like, let's say the Dixie Dudes came out with a song like, yeah, we're going to get rid of our wife, we're going to take her out to lunch. I mean, that would be a horrible. People, I can't believe they're playing that song. That's a terrible song.
And and one of those stories, the guys can't write a story about how the wife got fat and like she doesn't do what she used to do, and imagine the blowback.
You're getting yourself in trouble, John. Okay.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest. John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?